A slow journey through the salt-soaked decks of the age of exploration. The sea, when viewed from the safety of the shore, has always carried a strange kind of promise, a promise of adventure, of discovery, of something vast and endless, where the horizon stretches quietly beyond sight. But for those who lived their lives upon it, the sailors of the 17th century, the ocean was not a dream. It was a workplace, a prison, a home that was never still. Tonight, as you settle into stillness, we'll drift gently backward in time to an age when wooden ships creaked under the weight of wind-filled sails, and the world's edges were still uncertain. You'll imagine yourself aboard a merchant vessel or a royal galleon, perhaps the San Felipe or the Golden Hind. The year might be 1600 and something, the air thick with the mingled scents of pitch, salt, and wet rope. This will not be a tale of grand discoveries or cannon fire, but of ordinary life, slow, rhythmic, and unrelenting, on the decks of a 17th-century ship, the kind of life that unfolded in cycles of labor and waiting, beneath skies that could shift from calm blue to raging grey without warning. As you listen, you may find your breath settling into the slow rhythm of the waves. You may picture the ship rocking gently, the ropes swaying overhead, and the dull murmur of sailors as they go about their endless tasks. Our story begins there, not with a storm or a battle, but with the first quiet moments of dawn at sea. It is dawn on the open sea. A pale, silvery light creeps over the horizon, touching the restless water with a faint shimmer. The ship sways softly, groaning under its own weight as waves lap gently against its hull. You awake on a narrow, uneven bunk, if it can be called that. The wooden boards are hard and damp, your blanket little more than rough canvas. The air smells faintly of salt and smoke, mixed with the musty scent of damp timber. You hear the ship breathing around you, the low, steady groan of the masts, the quiet hum of ropes under tension, the distant splash of water against the bow. This is your world now, a world built entirely of wood, rope, and water. For weeks, even months, you've seen nothing else. You pull yourself upright. The light filtering through the hatch is grey and uncertain. Above, boots shuffle, and someone coughs. The deep, hollow cough of a man used to sea air and rationed water. A bell rings once and the day begins. You climb the ladder to the deck, and the cold air greets you instantly. The wind is brisk, filling the sails with a low, taut sigh. You blink against the brightness, eyes watering slightly from the sting of salt carried by the breeze. The world is nothing but water and sky. The horizon stretches in all directions, unbroken and unending, and yet you can feel how small you are within it. A sailor's day begins not with choice, but with duty. There is no clock, only the ship's bell, rung every half hour, marking the passage of time by sound alone. Each man knows his watch, his role, his rhythm. You're assigned to swab the deck, a task both mindless and essential. You dip the mop into seawater, lift it, and sweep it over the planks again and again, until your shoulders ache in the dull, repetitive way that soon becomes familiar. The water glistens briefly before drying into the soft grey grain of the wood. All around you, the ship hums with small, constant motion. One man tightens a line. Another patches a tear in the sail. Someone hauls a barrel across the deck, the dull thud of wood on wood echoing faintly. You hear the faint hiss of the cook's fire somewhere below, a smoky tang of salted meat and hard biscuit. There will be no fresh bread, no fruit, no water that hasn't already turned slightly stale. Your breakfast will be dry, but you'll eat it without complaint. Sailors learn to live without comfort. They sleep in shifts, eat in haste, and measure time by bells and storms, not by sunrise or sunset. Even when the sea is calm, the work never ends. Ropes fray, wood warps, sails tear, and so the day continues, quiet, steady, repetitive. The sea is deceptive that way. It looks peaceful, but it demands constant attention. You scrub, you coil, you haul, until your hands ache and your mind drifts. Sometimes you think of home, of solid ground beneath your feet, of the stillness of a bed that does not sway. But then the ship rocks again, and the thought passes, like a wave dissolving into foam. At midday, the sun burns through the mist. The deck grows warm underfoot, the air thick with the smell of tar and salt. You take your meal, salted pork, hard biscuit, and a ladle of brackish water. The pork is dry, but it's food. The biscuit, hard enough to chip a tooth, you soften in your drink. Conversation among sailors is sparse, not because there's nothing to say, but because words seem to scatter on the wind. Instead, you listen to the steady rhythm of the waves against the hull, a rhythm that has no beginning and no end. Afternoon brings more work. Perhaps you're sent aloft, climbing the rigging to furl a sail. The ropes are rough beneath your hands and the height dizzying. You move slowly, each knot and wooden beam familiar from long repetition. From above, the ocean stretches endlessly. It is both magnificent and indifferent. You think how strange it is that so much beauty can exist in a place that cares nothing for those who cross it. Evening comes quietly. The sun sinks low, turning the water a deep, molten gold. The wind softens and the ship slows, its creaks settling into a gentler rhythm. The bell rings again. Your shift ends, though time itself seems meaningless here. You descend to the lower deck, where hammocks sway in the dim light of a lantern. The air is thick, humid, and filled with the scent of wood, sweat, and smoke. You lie down, feeling the faint sway of the ship cradle you. The sounds of the sea become your lullaby. The low groan of the hull, the whisper of wind through the sails, the soft slap of waves against the sides. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will be the same, another day of labor and wind and endless horizon. But for now, the ocean seems almost kind. It rocks you gently, endlessly into rest. And so ends the sailor's day, a rhythm of effort and endurance, of salt, wood, and wind. But not all aboard these ships lived such anonymous lives. Some names, unlike the thousands who labored unseen, were carried forward by history, their voyages remembered not for comfort, but for their sheer scale of endurance. Next, we'll drift into the story of one such journey, a voyage that circled the globe and changed forever how the world understood its size. The voyage of Magellan. Thanks for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this trip back in time, be sure to subscribe for more stories from history. See you next time. Beneath the surface of the world's oceans lies a realm of silence. The water grows darker as light fades, colors shifting from pale green to blue, then to a calm, enveloping black. It is here, far below the restless waves, that the remains of centuries of voyages now rest. Each shipwreck tells a story of ambition and distance, of human effort swallowed by time. The ocean keeps these stories well, sealed in stillness, preserved by salt and sand. Imagine yourself descending slowly through the cool layers of the sea. The world above becomes distant, muffled, weightless. You can almost hear the faint creak of wood, the sigh of silt as it stirs beneath your presence. In the quiet gloom, outlines begin to form, a broken mast, a tilted hull, the ghostly shape of a ship that once carried dreams across the surface. This could be any vessel, a merchant ship from Spain, a Dutch East Indiaman, a humble fishing boat lost to storm. The sea does not discriminate. Each wreck is a frozen moment of history. Archaeologists who study these sites work carefully, patiently. There are no hurried gestures, no dramatic discoveries, just soft brushes, steady hands, and the gentle sound of bubbles rising to the surface. They map the decks plank by plank, recording every nail, every fragment of ceramic, as if each object were a word in a forgotten story. Consider, for example, the wreck of the Batavia, A Dutch trading ship, she sailed in 1628 from the Netherlands to the East Indies, laden with silver coins, spices, and passengers seeking fortune. But in the early hours of June 4th, 1629, she struck a reef off the coast of Western Australia. The ship broke apart under the weight of waves, its timbers splintering, its sails tearing free. Many survived the wreck, but what followed on those lonely islands was darker than the sea itself. Mutiny, fear, the collapse of order. Today, divers find fragments of her still, coins green with corrosion, bottles sealed with salt, and the shape of her hull resting quietly on the ocean floor. She has become not a tragedy, but a time capsule, a reminder that exploration always came at a cost. Or think of the Mary Rose, the pride of King Henry VIII's navy. She sank suddenly in 1545, only a mile from the shore of Portsmouth. Hundreds of men went down with her, and for centuries she lay beneath the silt, unseen, untouched. When she was raised from the seabed in 1982, she brought with her an entire world. Longbows, shoes, wooden plates, musical instruments, even the skeleton of the ship's dog still curled in a corner. Every object spoke softly of the people who had lived, worked, and died aboard her. The sea, though harsh, can be kind in its own way. It preserves what it takes, slowing decay to a near stillness. Barrels of spices retain their faint scent. Shoes still hold the curve of a human foot. The ocean floor becomes a quiet museum, one where the visitors must move slowly and breathe carefully. Each discovery is both revelation and reminder that the ocean remembers everything, but never willingly returns it. Some shipwrecks, however, remain hidden, lost in deep trenches, buried beneath centuries of shifting sand. Their names are forgotten, their coordinates erased by the constant movement of water. Occasionally, sonar scans detect faint outlines, unnatural symmetry among the rolling dunes of the seabed. And for a brief moment, a lost story flickers back into awareness, like a candle seen from afar. In museums and research centers around the world, archaeologists and conservators work tirelessly to piece together these fragments, not to glorify the past, but to understand it. To learn how people once lived at sea, how they built, traded, and endured. In their laboratories, waterlogged wood rests in gentle baths of preservatives. Iron tools are cleaned grain by grain until their shape, if not their strength, returns. Every artifact carries with it a kind of quiet dignity, an echo of the hands that once held it, the breath that once filled the air around it. And sometimes, among these wrecks, they find something unexpected, a personal object, a ring, a comb, a letter sealed within a chest. The ink may be faded, but the handwriting, careful and human, still whispers faintly through time. It reminds us that every voyage was more than an expedition. It was a gathering of lives. You might imagine now, standing in a dimly lit exhibition hall, looking upon the remains of a ship that once sailed into the unknown. The wood is dark and fragile, the artifacts arranged neatly, their labels small and unobtrusive. You read the descriptions slowly, not out of curiosity alone, but because each word feels like a bridge, connecting your stillness now to the restless movement of the past. And as you gaze at those relics, you realize something, that the ocean, for all its mystery, is not a place of endings. It is a place of keeping. It gathers and holds, transforming what was once alive into something that endures quietly, endlessly. The shipwrecks rest there still, silent, steadfast, swaying gently in the deep, their timbers home to coral and fish, their decks now gardens of seaweed and light. They no longer move with the wind, but with the slow pulse of the tide. They have become part of the ocean's own rhythm, a rhythm that, like the breath of sleep, goes on without beginning or end. As we drift upward once more, leaving behind the quiet world of wrecks and memories, the surface of the sea glows faintly above us, a soft mirror to the sky. But above those depths, life aboard a ship continued much as before, While the common sailors labored and endured, others lived very differently. Their cabins were private, their meals warm, their concerns not of survival, but of power. In our final chapter, we will step inside those rare spaces of comfort to sit quietly at the captain's table. On a 17th-century ship, the lower decks are dark, damp, and close. The air is heavy with the scent of salt, wood, and labor, but just above, separated by a few planks and a world of difference, lies another space entirely. Here the air feels lighter. Lanterns burn cleanly, their light golden and steady. A small table, carved, polished, and steady against the ship's motion, stands ready for the evening meal. This is the captain's table. Imagine it now. The steady creak of the timbers continues, but the sound is softened here, as though distance itself muffles the noise of the world below. The captain sits at the head of the table, his uniform carefully pressed, his posture formal even in solitude. He is surrounded not by luxury, but by a quiet, practical kind of order. His quarters are compact, yet to a sailor from the lower decks they would seem palatial. A private bunk, a desk scattered with maps and instruments, a compass, an astrolabe, a chart marked with thin, wavering lines. In the corner, a chest holds a few leather-bound books, and the smell of wax and parchment mingles with that of the salt. The captain's table is not just a place for meals, but for decisions. Every day as the ship sails onward, the captain studies the charts, consults the stars, and decides the course. His choices ripple outward, determining not only where the ship will go, but who will live to see home again. It is a lonely kind of power. Command at sea demands calmness. Even when storms rise and tempers flare, the captain must appear as steady as the horizon. Anger and fear are luxuries of the crew, not of the man in charge. Dinner is served simply, but with dignity. Perhaps a dish of salted meat, a piece of cheese preserved from home, and a cup of wine, diluted but fragrant. The plate is pewter, the utensils neatly laid. He eats slowly, listening to the faint thud of waves against the hull. At times, his officers join him, the navigator, the first mate, the ship's surgeon. Their conversation is quiet, deliberate. They speak of winds, of provisions, of the small fractures in morale that must be tended like cracks in wood. There is laughter sometimes, soft, careful, almost formal. Even humor feels disciplined here. These are men who live in two worlds at once, part of the crew, yet apart from it. Their comforts are relative, their authority absolute. After the meal, the others leave. The lanterns burn low. The captain remains awake, alone with his thoughts and the ship's slow breathing. He writes in his log, the neat, unbroken lines of ink recording the day's events. Wind direction, latitude, temperature. The tone is factual, the handwriting precise, as though by reducing the chaos of the sea to careful words, he can impose a kind of peace upon it. Outside, the night deepens. The deck above glows faintly with starlight. Sailors move like shadows, silent and measured. Their world is one of motion and obedience, their sleep broken by shifts and alarms. Yet, somewhere far below, they may picture this quiet cabin, the warm light, the calm, the certainty, and imagine that the captain's life is easy. But command, too, has its burdens. The captain must know when to ration food, when to risk storms, when to punish disobedience. Every choice has weight. And though his voice may sound calm, each decision carves a small hollow within him. Some captains are kind, firm but fair, beloved even in silence. Others are feared, their tempers the only storms the crew cannot predict. Both kinds, however, share one truth. The sea listens to neither. The ocean is its own master. It yields to no man's command. When the weather turns foul, the captain is the first awake and the last to rest. He stands at the helm as the waves rise, his eyes fixed on the dark horizon, his mind tracing the patterns of wind and current. He knows that in moments like this, leadership is not about control, but endurance. And when the storm passes and the sea lies smooth again beneath the stars, He allows himself a single, quiet breath of relief, not of triumph, but of gratitude. The calm that follows a storm at sea is unlike any other. The air feels purified, the sails hang heavy with dew, and in that stillness even the captain feels small again, a man adrift on something immeasurable. In such moments he might step out onto the deck, lantern in hand, and look up at the night sky. The constellations are familiar friends: Orion, Cassiopeia, the Southern Cross. He traces them in his mind, measuring their distance against his charts. The stars are his compass, his only constant. And beneath those same stars, hundreds of sailors sleep, their bodies swaying gently in hammocks, their dreams filled with home. The captain, meanwhile, returns to his cabin, closes his logbook, and lowers the lantern flame. The ship creaks softly, settling into the rhythm of the waves. There is no music, no applause, only the soft chorus of the ocean's breath. He lies down, listening to the gentle knock of ropes against the mast. It is a sound he has known for decades, steady, eternal, like the beating of a slow heart. And as he closes his eyes, his thoughts drift not toward the next day's voyage, but toward the stillness of the sea itself, that ancient, indifferent companion that swallows both greatness and anonymity with the same quiet grace. Beneath him, the crew sleeps. Above, the sails whisper faintly in the wind. The ship, timeless and small, floats between the stars and the depths. It is, for this one moment, at peace. The sea, through all its ages, has been both a mirror and a measure of humanity. It has shown us our courage, our greed, our endurance, but above all, it has shown us how small we truly are. Tonight, we have drifted through that world, among sailors and captains, through storms and silence, across decks that creaked under the weight of centuries. We have felt the rough boards beneath our hands, smelled the tar and salt, heard the distant call of gulls fading into the horizon, and perhaps, in these quiet imaginings, we have also touched a kind of peace. For though the sea can be cruel, it is also eternal, a slow, unending rhythm, steady as breath, gentle as sleep. So as you rest now, imagine the ship rocking softly beneath you, the lanterns dimming, the waves lapping faintly against the hull. The ocean's voice becomes a lullaby, calm, patient, and timeless. The journey continues somewhere, but for you, this is where it pauses. Breathe deeply. Let the sea carry you. Let the world grow quiet. Good night, and may the tides of history rock you gently into sleep.